Good morning. What a great morning, huh? What a story. It blows me away when I hear people talk about their faith in Christ and how it's changed them, it rerouted their life. I mean, summer story. Wow. That was just fantastic. Man, I can't get enough of that. And I hope you can't either. I hope you get the opportunity to see somebody in your life do the very same thing that she did. That was just awesome. What a way to start the morning. So it's good to see all of you here this morning. I want to ask a question. You know, we started last week with a thing that we're calling For the One. That's going to be our statement. You're going to start to see that everywhere throughout this year. And we wanted to kick off the year this way because we want everyone to be thinking this direction. All right, so you might need to think about this. Who was the one in your life that came after you and invited you to church? Who was that person? Who was the one who invited you to maybe watch online? Maybe that was where you started first, and then you started coming, or whatever. What was it that connected you to God? Who was that person? And you might even go back as far as people. You know, I had a lady. Her name was Vaughn. Vaughn was a sweet lady. She came to me, took care of my need, and shared the gospel with me. And then my mom, she followed up with that. It was amazing. And I remember those things. But I can remember other people throughout my life that were a part of bringing me to know Jesus. But to get us started today, I want to ask you a question about this as we kind of launch into this discussion today. What makes something valuable? Okay, what makes something valuable? I brought some things with me today that are valuable to me. I got them in my pocket here. And these are kind of cool. These are baseball cards. All right, if you can see the one, this one is Pete Rose. Back when he was it was his second year, not his rookie year, that would be more valuable. Okay, this one's not as valuable. I've had this a long, long time, all right? No, I'm not going to tell you how long because then you'll know. I think I got it when I was about 8 years old. This one here, this is Frank Pastore. Anybody remember Frank Pastore? A pitcher for the Reds for a long time, and Steve Sax, who was the second baseman for the New York Yankees, hit a line drive right back at him and hit him in the elbow, and that was the end of his career. And the best thing about this one is that I've had long conversations personally with Frank Pastore. I actually invited him to come. He spoke at a youth retreat that I was leading. And so I invited him to come all the way from Los Angeles, where he was living at the time. And he came, and so he signed this baseball card for me. All right? I went out, and it was a joke between Frank and I because, not many of you raised your hands. Frank was an amazing guy. He had a way of talking to students that was amazing. He could just talk right to them and unfold so much of Scripture and stories and things like that. And everybody's fascinated, All the guys were fascinated with him because he was quite a guy. He was the one who had a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. And so, back in that day, I mean, not now, based on all the, everything, I don't know how people are throwing over 100 miles an hour. I could only get about 90 myself. Anyway, Frank, this was valuable, though, to me because I remember the conversations. Now, not too long ago, a few years back, Frank was riding his motorcycle in California and suffered a severe accident, and he passed away. So this is very valuable to me because I treasure not just his signature or anything. I'm not going to ever give this up and give it to somebody else. Hopefully, I can pass this on to someone who this will be valuable to, and they'll understand the value of it. It was different than Pete Rose, all right? Never met Pete, never met. I saw him I think we were about 2,000 feet from each other. He was down at bat, and I was up in the stands. He didn't know I was there that day. Or those days. I actually watched them a few times, So you got the idea, right? More value on this one. And then this one right here. You know what this is? Anybody know what this is? Yeah. You know what this is, Callie? Yeah, I mean, it's a cassette tape. All right? And cassette tapes were the big thing because they overtook 8-track tapes. This you could record on. And so this one right here has one of my first sermons on it. And so if you listen to that today and you compared it to what I do now, you'd say, boy, he hasn't improved a bit. Anyway, but you get the idea, right? This was kind of valuable to me to listen. And I had this little squeaky voice when I talked. At least that's what the cassette sounds like, okay? It was kind of amazing. And then in my pocket, I have something here. And you might say, oh, an old pocket knife, right? But this was my dad's pocket knife that he bought when he came back from World War II. All right? And so case knives that are, maybe some of you guys even have one in your pocket. Maybe some of you ladies do too. But you have a knife in your pocket or whatever, you carry one. You know, Case is a big name. And they are made or manufactured in my hometown. And so my dad got this, and it's got all kinds of nasty on it and everything. If you open that up, I smell my dad. It's weird, you know, kind of to have that. And my dad's been gone for 20 years now. And so it's like, I smell that and I think, wow, I remember things. And he gave me this knife. And I've given a lot of the knives my dad gave me. I've given them to my sons and passed them on in the family. But this one's staying with me because this one's valuable. But it's valuable for a lot of reasons. Believe it or not, it was manufactured in 1946. And so this knife has been around a long time, and it is valuable from a standpoint of turning it in and getting money for it. I could get a lot of cash for it. I'll never do that. There'd have to be some reason, like my kids' lives are on the line or something like that, you know, or my wife, I have to do something like that. Yeah, but this knife is precious. And then, see this? You see the ring? Okay? This is not like anything you would say, wow, look at that, I want one of those. It's my dad's sapphire ring. It's a blue sapphire. And it's kind of cool, you know. I remember it because I think I have about 3 dents in the back of my head here from where my dad kind of pop, pop, pop during church when I'd like to talk. And so, you know, that would be one of those things. Kind of funny. Or my dad would sometimes pop me if I didn't let my mom go through the door first. Okay? You know, still a good practice, still a very good practice, I think. I always try to do that, and I try to teach that to my boys. That's very important to let a lady go through the door first. Now, I may be old-fashioned. You may not like that. So, ladies, you might not even care for that. But, you know, I always, trust me, the dents on the back of my head tell me I have to do it. Okay? It just reminds me. But this is important to me. It's not worth much. It's not that valuable. But it says a lot to me. And I tend to think that the things that are valuable to us, they're the things that we put a lot of emphasis on. They're the things that we decide are so valuable that we'll do anything we can to make sure that we're putting them up there and taking care of it and making sure that it's a part of our lives. This sits on the bedstand right beside me all the time. That's where it is. Along with a little Batman statue that my grandson gave me and a little magnet that my other grandson gave me that says #1 Grandpa, you know. And then I went to Gatlinburg and got one of those little plastic Jesus statues. You ever seen those? You know what I'm talking about? They're just about like this big. They're not, it's not real definitive and everything. And I know some people say no graven images or whatever. I don't think that's what this is. I just believe I need a little Jesus. And whenever I see him standing there, it reminds me. It's right there by my Bible and by some other things that are important to me, you know. But it's there. This ring is right there too because I remember the things my dad taught me, the things that were values to him that are values to me. And it reminds me every day. There it is. And so I want to think not only my dad, but my heavenly dad, my heavenly Father. God himself has things that he values. And that relationship I have with him is so valuable that none of this, all of this stuff will go away, but that will last forever. And the things that he values, I think, have to be valuable to me. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's not always that way. Not always am I valuing the things that God values. Sometimes I get selfish, and sometimes I think about things that I want and what I want to do with them and how I want to live my life. And I try to make things like rings and knives and baseball cards more important? No, not really. None of that is valuable. None of that's going to last forever. But the one thing that God values, that He's passed on to all of us, not just me, but to all of us, anybody who wants to be a follower of Jesus, you want to do God's plan for life. And I can tell you, if you choose to do this, if you choose to do what Summer has done, if you've chosen Jesus to walk in your life and follow His principles and live the way He would want us to, I can tell you, you're going to have peace, just like she has about her life and her decisions, her choices, the things that she had to do. All of us are going to come to that point. I want to go back to something today that I believe is something. What makes something valuable? A lot of times it's how long it lasts. And really, ultimately, the only thing that lasts forever is us. People, those screaming middle schoolers in the room right next to us. All of them. This is what makes us valuable. It's because God's heart makes us valuable. He created us, knows us, loves us, has a plan, wants the best. And He's given us principles to live by and to follow Him to give us a better life and to make us better at life. And I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to be in line with that. And I want to invite you. I don't know where you are in your relationship with God. I don't know what is going on in your life. But I'm going to invite you today to take a step toward Him and His values in a strong way. Something that I hope will influence you for the rest of your life, and especially eternity. So I want to remind you of a statement I made last week. And if you weren't here, then I'll catch up, all right? It's this: because God never stops going after the one who's missing. That's why we're doing this concept of for the one. For the one. And I can tell you that if it hadn't been for those people in my life that thought I was the one that they were reaching out to, where would I be without their storytelling and their life in front of me, their example, all that they were doing for me? Where would I be if I didn't have that? And I think we all in this room know someone, don't we? Somebody who could really become valuable in our lives because they're valuable to God, and somebody that you know that could benefit a lot from knowing and having a personal relationship with Jesus, and knowing, just like Summer, knowing that your sin is forgiven and that God has restored you and wants to put you in a place where you can actually grow and get to know Him more and understand His will and make good choices and decisions, and not just that, but then do the things that He's called us to do, which is to invite other people to follow. So I want to take you to a passage of Scripture. Last week we were in Matthew, and it's similar. The verses that we'll read today are similar to what we saw last week, but they take a little different spin this time. It's in the book of Luke. Luke was not one of the disciples that walked with Jesus all the time. He actually was one who researched all the other disciples and heard the stories. And so he did that so that he could pass it on and be the one in the life of somebody else. Matter of fact, that somebody else was a Roman official. All right, his name was Theophilus. You can call him Theo for short. Okay, and this is what it was, the big part of this. Luke made sure that Theophilus understood everything about Jesus. And so he told all the stories, especially the ones that Jesus would tell. Jesus would use these great stories, he called them parables. And those parables were used as a way to pull people in. It was kind of like a hook, when he was talking to them, he'd get their attention with the story and bring them in. And as he'd bring them in, Jesus would actually then start to give them truth within that parable. And so today, Jesus has been talking to a group of people in Luke chapter 14, and then he goes into Luke 15. And all that the chapters are just ways to separate it out so that you can see the stories and have a better way to do it. Nothing fantastic or magical about the numbers, all right? Just Luke 15, it's a way to find it, all right? Kind of like the page number, if you will. So Luke 15, verse 1 says this: Now, the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. This was a common thing for Jesus. Many times people would come who really, they were very curious about what he was doing, and people especially that other people, like the religious people and ones like that, they didn't want these people around. When we're talking about tax collectors, they were people who were Jews who would take on the responsibility of collecting taxes for the Roman government. And many times they would not only take the amount that was due to the government, but they would take extra. All right? So that's why they were hated. It all came down to money. Have you noticed that usually a lot of things just come down to money, don't they? And so that's why it was such a bad thing. And then they said tax collectors and sinners. So let's just get an idea who these people were. These people were basically the friends of the tax collectors. They were the ones who could go to the tax collector's house for parties and stuff like that. They were the ones who gave in to the Roman government a lot. And I can tell you, the Jewish people didn't like that. And so when Jesus was teaching them and trying to get the word across and get it to where they would understand it and everything, it was hard because Jesus was trying to reach everyone, especially people who were tax collectors and sinners. Because really, if people were religious, they had all the answers in front of them they could have taken and could have understood. But instead, they didn't. They would say, no, these people, we don't want them around. They didn't understand. They didn't want to follow Jesus' principle of grace and mercy and love and care. And so they were all gathering around to hear Jesus. They want to hear what he's saying because they had heard that his message was coming across pretty clearly from time to time, that he was for them. He was definitely for these people. So the verses go on, and it says this. In Luke 15:2, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered. You ever been around muttering people? You know what I'm talking about when I say mutter? You remember what was like on cartoons, there would be cartoons. The cartoon characters, they would get beat up or whatever, and then they got, because they couldn't say bad words in front of kids on Saturday mornings. Okay, that's when cartoons used to be. Okay, but anyway. And so they would start muttering, and they would start doing this. We see muttering constantly right now, okay? Most people who are talking about things that are going on in our country, they're muttering. They're muttering about one side or the other a lot. But it happens within the church too. It happens a lot when people start to say, well, these people, I don't know if we want that kind. Ever heard that? I don't know if we want that kind or their kind or those kind of people. I don't know whether we want them in the church. They might ruin it. And okay, let's just face it, all right? If we all look around, we all have potential to ruin it, right? I mean, we none of us are perfect. I can tell you that the church is not a place for perfect people. Matter of fact, no perfect people are allowed. All right? It just doesn't work that way. If you're perfect, then go to heaven. Was that funny? It kind of is, though, isn't it? So, better than telling them to go somewhere else, right? Anyway, all right. You get the idea, though, right? Think about this. If you're perfect, that's really the only place you can really reside, is in heaven. So I can tell you that being perfect is not a possibility in the human life at all. We can't be perfect. And so this is what's great. It says, these people, they started muttering, and what were they doing? They were picking apart because these people weren't perfect. These people weren't perfect. You ever been in a circumstance or a situation? And quite honestly, I want to, on behalf of the church at large, I want to apologize to anybody who's ever been hurt in the past because you've gone to a church and they judged you based on the way you looked, the way you smelled, the way you talked, how much money you had, how you dressed, all of that. Or even not giving you enough room to actually come in and find out who Jesus was in the first place to even get your life changed. They made judgment on you. I'm sorry if that ever happened to you. all right? It shouldn't happen in the church that way. And so he hears them muttering. Jesus can hear them muttering, okay? It's like when your kids talk under their breath, or the people around you talk under their breath. You can hear them, right? You know what they're saying. So they were like, oh, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. He goes and has parties with these people. Oh, can you believe this? This guy, he goes over to people's house. I can't believe he's hanging out with tax collectors. Yeah, and sinners too. Yeah, right? And these are the religious people. They're saying that. Okay? Now, Jesus decides to tell them a story. This is a story he tells them. Goes further in the passage. Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? All right, this was the story we heard last week, if you were here. And you remember, it's this idea of a shepherd. And a shepherd has sheep. And if you have 100 sheep, you're moderately wealthy as a shepherd or the owner of those sheep. You would have been a somewhat wealthy person. And so suppose one of you has 100 sheep and then one of them goes missing. You can't find him. Doesn't he leave that 99 that are just fine to go find the one missing? Right? I can tell you that we likened it to losing one of your kids last week, right? You don't go to the mall and you went in with 4 kids, come out with 3 and say, not a bad day. You don't do that, right? You go look for them, right? You go look for that kid, even if it's the one. Okay? We all had a kid. It was the one, I mean, it's okay, but we still love them and we want them to be part. Okay, you're still going to go after that one. Okay? Hear this. What Jesus was trying to get across to these very snooty, snobby, religious people that thought they were better than these sinners and tax collectors, what he said to them basically tells us this. He tells us this story, and he's wanting them to get it. But it comes down to this. God doesn't put conditions on anyone's worth. No conditions. From God's standpoint, he doesn't put any conditions on anybody's worth or value. So God doesn't go, that person's not as valuable as this one. This one does so much more. This one honors me. This one loves me. This one gives more money. This one dresses the right way when they go to church. I once heard this story. I got to stop here and say it. I once heard someone say, it's about time we start dressing biblically around here. And I was going to say, loincloths and robes. Really? Please, I don't want to see any of you in loincloths and robes. Okay, please? And, just no. Okay? Really? Why do we make judgments on things like this? Why do things like that come up? Why is it that we want to put these restrictions on people and make them do certain things so that they fit because we want it to be our own idea of religion or relationship with God. And God doesn't put any value on any of that stuff. There is no conditions on anyone's worth. So I don't know who you know that you might think this person's ridiculously stupid and I don't want anything to do with them. Anybody have somebody like that? And you're like, don't say it. Don't say it. We all do. We all know somebody in our life that it's like, oh my goodness, this person's never going to come. They need Jesus. And sometimes we go, I don't know if I want them in heaven with me. I'm seriously, it kind of comes across that way, doesn't it? If we do this. And so he sees eternal value in every person. Because if he didn't see eternal value in every person, Jesus wouldn't have come and Jesus wouldn't have died and Jesus wouldn't have rose from the dead if he didn't have a sense of unconditional love, mercy, grace, and acceptance to them. He wants every person because he values every person. And so Jesus tells that story. Hey, look, I'll go, the shepherd's going to go and find that one. Well, look at how it develops in the rest of the passage. It says this, and when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. I want to tell you something. That right there in itself, many times, it's like your kids, you want to say, all right, you don't get lost like that again. Now, come on. No, this is depicting the idea of picking that kid up and going, oh, I'm so glad you didn't get lost in produce again. I'm so glad to see you. I can tell you that it's incredibly important that we don't forget this. He puts them on his shoulders and cares for that sheep and carries it back. You ever been so far away or so lost? Do you know somebody who's so far away and so lost that they just need you maybe to come alongside and be the hands and feet of Jesus and maybe, in a sense, put them on your shoulders and carry them back? Do you know somebody like that? That's what Jesus is trying to get across to them. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. They have a party because of that. They have a party because he found this lost sheep. Hey, I was going to be down one, and I got him. He's fine. He's back with the whole thing. I got all 100. Here they are. Let's party. So then he goes on. Verse 7, it says this, I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven. Now he gets very, very specific. It's no longer about sheep. It's about people. He says, I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. It's great when Christians get together, but when Christians get together just to get together and not think about how we can reach out to the people who aren't there, the people we know that need to come in, when we do that, we make ourselves feel very satisfied and we feel very good about what we know and how we live, and our church becomes very comfortable and convenient, and we go in and we say, hi, 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 and we're all great about each other, but there are people that are outside the walls, people that we know. Every one of us know them. They live in our neighborhoods. When we got up this morning and we drove here, they were still snoozing. You might say, yeah. You might know somebody at work that it seems like their life just all the time is a wreck. And it's like, if they just knew Jesus, if they just had the peace, if they just had that feel of understanding, if they knew that they could make better choices, if they knew that they could find someone who cared about them and loved them unconditionally and accepted them for who they are, can you imagine the difference it might be in their life? See, that's what he's trying to get across. The idea is that when someone trusts Jesus, when Summer trusted Jesus, they had a party in heaven. When Greg trusted Jesus, they had a party in heaven. I could go right around the room and you could put your name in that list. They partied in heaven. Why? Because that's what God's heart is. God's heart is there's rejoicing in heaven when one sinner, when any of us put our faith in Jesus and follow him, then there's rejoicing. That's the whole goal in life. Too many times I think we've made going to church and all of this about social interaction with each other, and really it is. There's the great benefit of that, but there has got to be that connection that we make with God. It's either real or it's not, and if it's not real, then quit coming. It's not worth that. But if it's real, then you want to do everything you can, and you want to take as many people as you can with you. Why? Because you'll get a lot of rewards in heaven, right? No, because you think so much of the one who laid his life down for you. You want to take as many people there to be at his feet, in heaven, worshiping him and praising him for eternity because of what he's done in your life. That's why. That's why. Do we think enough of God that we want to do that? See, when Jesus met his disciples, this is what he told them. In Matthew chapter 4, it says this, "Come, follow me." This is what Jesus would say to the disciples, and he said this to some specifically. "Come, follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people." The whole idea is that a disciple, a follower of Jesus, someone who claims Jesus, the role we play, the responsibility he has given to us, and I don't understand why he gives us such an important role, because I mess up all the time. But he gave us a responsibility to be a part of his kingdom. And listen, really all we have to do is introduce our friends and family, our coworkers, our fellow students, our neighbors. We just need to introduce them to Jesus. And Jesus does the saving in their life. We don't have to save them or change them or anything. That's not our job. Our responsibility is to introduce them. So to follow him, you have to be a fisher of people. You have to be willing to go out and tell people. And so Peter says this too in another way. In 1 Peter 3, and this is after Jesus' resurrection, this is after all of that, he says, "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord." Revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. Just make sure you do it with gentleness and respect. Okay? You're not supposed to beat them with it. That's why it's important for every person who says they're a follower of Jesus to make sure they're learning as much as they can about Jesus. That's why doing things like we do around here, like Circle Up this Tuesday night, and other things, that's why it's important for you to continue to learn and to grow closer to God in that. And then when you do, you're going to be able to give the right answers. And if you don't know the right answer, you know what the best thing to tell a friend who's asking you something about God? Anybody know? You just say, "I don't know." Why don't you come with me? Come sit with me at church. I'll introduce you to some of my friends, and we'll work out this answer together. Wouldn't that be a great way to do it? Huh? I mean, wouldn't that work? So look at this. I take you to this, and I want you to remember a few things, all right? How many of you here are on the hospitality team? Let me see your hands if you're on the hospitality team. Raise your hand. Okay. Wrong, okay? I see a few people that stand at the doors and greet people, but do you know who's on the hospitality team in this church? Everybody. Everybody. You're in this room today, you're on the hospitality team. You know why? Because when you start to interact with other people, think about what that does for them. They feel like, wow, this is great. So who's on the hospitality team? Okay, everyone, that's good. That kind of puts it on everybody else. You're supposed to say, "I am." Who's on the hospitality team? Very good. Very good. I heard you back there. You didn't say it. Okay? I'm just kidding. All right. And then remember this. We have to build trust and relationships first. You have to build trust. You're not there to go in and say, "Listen, did you know Jesus loves you? You're a sinner and you got it." That's not how it works. You need to be willing to spend the time and invest in their life and start praying for them and interacting with them, having coffee with them, having them over to your house, whatever it takes. Help them change a tire, help them change their brakes, whatever it is you can do. Maybe it's, "Hey, can I bring over, I saw that you guys were sick. Can I bring a loaf of bread over? Can I do that?" There's all kinds of ways that you can do this to invest in people's lives. Just think a little bit. What would you like somebody to do for you? That's the best step of what you could do for somebody else. And then the simple question is come sit with me. Come sit with me. Come and sit with me. Invite them to come with you. But I sit with my friends at church. Look at me. Really? Really? You couldn't invite that person to your friend group and introduce them to your friends? And maybe through that, it could be great. That could be amazing. And then, when you're talking to somebody, you're looking for the answers. Here's some easy ones. The 3 knots, okay? You guys remember this? I talked about this a few months ago, and I'm going to bring it up again until we all can say it without forgetting. There are 3 knots. If they say I'm not in church, or things are not going well, or I'm just not prepared for this. If you hear a friend say that, that is a great opening for you to say, well, hey, listen, I've been there, and you know what really helps me? It gives you an opportunity to introduce your faith into the situation. So to invite them to come to church, or to be a part of what we do here, or to be a part of any of the things that we're talking about, you're listening for these three things. Do you hear a friend say, yeah, we're not in church, or I'm not in church? Never done the church thing. I don't know anything about the church. Or I went to church, and I'm not in church now. Or it's not going well. Things in my life are just not going well. You ever run into anybody like that lately? You might say, yeah, that's me. Okay, well, the hope that you have, or the hope you maybe need, is what your friend needs as well. And then not prepared for. I just wasn't prepared for this to happen. When it comes down to it, we ask the question, what is valuable? The most valuable thing that exists in our world today are people. And that's what God values. It matters to Him. And so I take you to this. If it matters to God, then it matters to us. Okay? It should matter to us. Not just should, it needs to matter to us. If it matters to Him, we don't just ignore that. We believe it and know it, and we live it, and we trust it, and we live it so far out that we'll do anything to make sure people understand and get that. And then, I just come down to it. So who is your one? Who is the one that you could invest in? And I'm talking about over this year, over the next couple of months, it could be this week, but who's the one? Who's that one person in your life? Okay, let me ask that. Do you know? Do you know who the one would be? On your seat, everybody get the card out and show them to me. Okay? Everybody get the card out and show them to me. Okay. Yeah, it's dark, but I can still see the back row. Hold those up, okay? Okay, you got my idea, right? You get the idea. You have a card, and up here we have this tube and this one over here. And at the base of the tube is a coffee mug with pens in it. We didn't put pens on the seat, okay? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You can do it as soon as the band starts to play. You can come up here and write a name on that card, whoever it is. You don't have to put first and last, just first name. And all this is nothing magic. This is not your order to heaven. Here, God, I want 2 cousins and a brother. Okay? That's not what this is about. This is about who you're asking God to put in your life. Somebody you know now, that one person, just one. There are already names in these tubes from Easter. You may have put a name in there then. Well, if they're still not here with you yet, if they haven't come as far as to make a step into the church or talk to you about this, then put their name in again. Just recommit yourself to it. Maybe you've got a name in there and you know somebody else. Put their name in. All right? And you can do this after the service is over. You can wait if you'd like. But I'm going to encourage you. If you've got a name and you know, then maybe just while the singing's going on, just come up, get a pen, write the name, and put it in the tube. Okay? That's all I'm asking. Okay? We're not going to check it. You don't have to put your name on it. This is a matter of just making an outward statement to God that this is what I want to do. And it will be a reminder to us of how important the one is. See, that's why we've said we're going to be for the one. Being for the one allows us to follow through with what God wants to do in our life. So I'm going to encourage you, okay? Just get right up while we're singing. Walk up, use the pen up here, or use a pen in your pocket or whatever, it's fine. And put those cards in there. And you can continue to do this throughout the year. Just continue to add them. All right? Don't be afraid to do it. So I'm going to pray. But before I pray, I want you to see this one last statement. The reason we do this is because God never stops going after the one who's missing. And we shouldn't either. That's His value system. That's what He values. Not just something, that we're trying to do for some kind of special thing to, as a theme or whatever for the... No. This is God's heart. And so if we're going to do and follow God's heart, then we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to put his values in our life as our values. If it matters to him, it matters to us. So let me pray.